Unmute. Hello everyone and welcome to another Flock meetup for today. As you might know, Flock is a software engineering company, but for today we have a presenter that is not a technology nerd but an actual brain nerd. I just met him. His name is Pjotr Peulen, and he's a really passionate guy, knows everything about brain and neuroscience, and he's going to tell us something about neuroscience and of deep work and boredom. Welcome, Pjotr.
Thanks. Super. Yes. Hi guys. Hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Pjotr Peulen. Today we're going to talk about neuroscience and the neuroscience of deep work and boredom. And thank you all for watching this later on. Sorry?
10 people now.
10 people now. Maybe someone will join later on. Perfect. Now we're going to talk about neuroscience, the neuroscience of deep work and boredom. But before we're going to dive into the neuroscience, and we're going to dive in a little bit. Of course, I will first introduce myself a little bit, and I'm going to talk why I give these kind of sessions. I'm Pjotr Peulen. I'm a vitality coach. I help people with sleeping issues. I help people with managing their stress, and I help people balance their work and life. Most of the time I do that one-on-one with a coaching session, but I also give workshops and masterclasses similar to this session. And for all those sessions I use neuroscience as a tool. Not because it's easy to explain, but it helps me to explain even vaguer and abstracter kind of concepts. So I use neuroscience to help me explain concepts like consciousness and resilience. Because I'll often talk about those kind of topics about attention, energy, and focus. And neuroscience helps me to form a mental picture. Because I like mental pictures, and they make things that are very vague and abstract a little bit more tangible, a little bit more, and it speaks a little bit more to your understanding. So today we're going to talk about deep work and boredom, and we're going to form two mental pictures. The first one we do in the first half, then I do a very small test with you guys, and then in the second one we do another mental picture. So and overall we're going to create two mental pictures together, and they will help you to understand all your mental capabilities, all your mental limitations, and help you to understand deep work and boredom. So without further ado, let's dive in. The first mental picture will be indeed about mental processing power. And it's a very vague and abstract term. So what is mental processing power? So maybe you know that our brain uses electric impulses to send information from one place to the other. And those electric impulses, they need energy, they need power. And they use power and get power from burning glucose and oxygen, but without any neuroscientific or neurochemistry behind it. We're going to talk about what that energy does in our brain. So that energy, let's imagine our brain is full with energy, and that energy has to be stored. And we can store that in something like a battery. And whenever that battery is fully charged, we can use our full mental processing power. And when we use our full mental processing power, we can do whatever we want. We can think, we can analyze, we can reflect. Basically, we can do everything that's necessary for human life. We can predict the past, make sense of the past, predict the future, and of course live in the moment. And we have something about 4 data centers. 4 data centers that take up about 25% of our mental processing power each. 25% that we can use for one particular issue, one particular topic. So we can combine them all and use all our 100% of mental processing power and use that on one particular task. And if we use that on that one particular task, well, we can completely use everything we have. Or we can split it up, and we can split it up over 4 different tasks. So maybe you guys right now finish some work, and that work has not completely gone. That work is still somewhere in the back of your brain being processed right now. Maybe for most of you guys, after they're working, not 100% is focused at me. maybe 75% is, because one data center is still processing the information. Or even 50%, because it's a big problem, and the problem needs attention and needs mental processing power to be dealt with. So all that information cannot just be shut down. That information will still need to be processed before you can switch all your full 100% on me. So I will not be the first to tell that multitasking is bad and that we are very bad at multitasking, but I hope I will be the last one to have to tell you, because we are unable to use our full 100% on one particular task, and then within a split second transfer all that mental processing power on another task. And maybe, when you are finished with your work and you came to this meeting, you came to the talk, and you try to put all your attention on me and on this talk, then still, right now, as I speak, you are not using that full 100% on me and on this talk, because 25% is maybe already putting it in context. 25% is still, whatever he's saying, I remember, and I've heard something about it before. And I'm still using 25% subconsciously to try to put it all into place. I heard something that's similar, I know something, or you got an idea from something that I got, that I'm talking about. A new idea arose, and the idea, is taking hold, a little bit more hold. And after a while, your attention will shift from whatever I'm saying, and your attention will shift off. You're not focused at me, my words will slip away, whatever I'm saying, you won't follow, because that attention, or that one data center that is processing something else, something different, or something related to this topic, will acquire more processing power, more mental processing power to deal with all that information. And then our consciousness will shift. We first had your consciousness at me and use about 75%, until one data center takes over and says, all right, I need more, give me all the attention, because I'm going to finish this topic or this idea. And maybe those guys that just finished their work a little bit later, they still are processing that information, are still busy with all that information, and after a little while of letting it sink in, a new idea arose. Oh, I should have done it this way, or I should have done it differently. And then it will be very hard to put all your attention at me, because that is something urgent, and it's coming out on top, and your attention will shift to it. So we have we have some mental processing power, and the mental processing power is divided in those four. So we can either use it all on one, or we can split it up over four. So let's say we're juggling 4 different tasks at once. The first one, uses one data center, the other one uses another, so forth, so forth. And we are switching our ideas and our tasks from one to the other. So first we are working on project A, and we have one data center focusing on the project. And in the background of our brain, subconsciously, 3 other issues are being dealt with. Maybe one is, what I'm going to eat today or later on, or what kind of context is he talking about, or what was my work that I was still finishing. And you can switch it from one to the other. But if you switch it to the other one, it doesn't mean that the first data center is suddenly stopping with any processing. It's still busy until we finish it, until we give it some closure, until we have something that will leave it off. So we have only 25% of the data of a mental processing power to be focused at one task at a time. And of course, we would like, for some tasks, we would like our full 100% and a full 100% mental processing power. And I have many techniques that help you with that deep work. Ways to improve your full capacity or your full mental processing power is focused at one particular task and not on different ones, once at a time. And some of the techniques I steal from people like Newport or David Allen, and some of them I adapt a little bit to my liking. And one of those techniques is the productivity bubble. A perfect bubble that will protect me for any external interruptions. Any colleagues that come over and ask you something differently, how are you doing with this other project? Any family members, if you work at home, that will help you or will disturb you to talk with you. And whenever I have that perfect bubble, no interruptions, no notifications, nothing that can disturb me for about an hour of deep work, I use an 8-second rule. And this 8-second rule is very important because if you have a deep work session and you use that productivity bubble, completely be focused on whatever you're doing, and someone else will come in and talk about you, or will tell you something different, or ask you a question, you got 8 seconds. Only 8 seconds. Stop what's coming off. 8 seconds to tell them, I'm in my productivity bubble right now. Please come back within an hour. Because if you are continuing with whatever you will tell to me, or everything you will say to me, I will need one of my data centers to deal with the topic that you bring, to the table right now, or the question that you will ask me. And it can only be a very brief piece of information. You can only just name the company you're working on, or the client. And you, of course, will also put all the associations coming on top. And you already know, or maybe we're losing a client. Maybe I did something terrible. So only very, very small piece of information can already trigger 25% losing on your primary task, and will do something else. Similar with just an email or a subject line. If you just, if your notification on and pop-up will come up with a notification and your email and subject line, you can already read a few words. Those can be enough to trigger one of your data centers being switched from the primary task and will work on that other one. And you can still continue on your primary task. You still have that 75%, but you lost a quarter of your mental processing power to deal with that particular task. And maybe, if you think you're right, I am smart enough, I work fast enough, and I'm intelligent enough, and I don't need that 100% of my mental processing power on particular tasks, then it's okay to be interrupted so now and then. But if you need, for some particular task, you need your full mental processing power, your full capabilities, creativity, intelligence, then you need something like a productivity bubble to limit everything that might interrupt you and might disturb you. All right. I have a small test. Could you go to the next slide? I have a very small test for you guys. Could you scan this QR code? And if you go to this QR code, we can see how bored we can get and how good we are at being bored. And I would like you to be bored with me together about 5 minutes. So let's try to be bored for 5 minutes. And whenever you go into the test, there will be a timer for you, an individual timer, and a timer will go off. And whenever you feel the urge to do something different, the urge to go to another tab or another application on your phone, you remember the time and you go to the next slide and you fill in the time. 5 minutes. See how easy that is, or hard. I see some very bored faces. Very good. Thank you all. Amazing, amazing. For all those that are still fine with being bored, perfect. Well done, well done. If you like some tips, of course you can. If you fill in your email, I will send you some tips if that's what you like. But remember the time that you are easily being bored, or okay with being bored. Awesome. So we talked about mental processing power, and mental processing power is what we need for deep work. We need our mental processing power to help us to work deep, to analyze, to reflect, to do everything that we are doing, everything that we are thinking about. And Willem, could you go to the next slide? Because the second mental picture that I would like to create with you guys is about mental storage capacity. So if you are okay with being bored, and if you are okay with how deep you can work, well, maybe then you are, easily dealing with tasks. You're doing something that we call single tasking, doing one task at a time, which allows you to, use a long period of time for one particular task and work on that as long as possible until you can't anymore. Until you either get bored or your mind and your attention will drift off. We need, on the one side, our mental capacity, our mental processing power, and on the other side, our mental storage capacity. So I think that everyone knows that after a while of working, or especially after a whole day of working, you might feel that particular feeling of a very heavy head. Just a dazed feeling and a hard time of taking in new information. So maybe this time, will be a hard time for you to take in new information because you have worked the whole day, you have worked the whole week, and all that information has to be stored somewhere. Because our mental processing power is using our mental processing power to take in information, to analyze it, but then we need to store it. And that storing is a very complicated and very interesting process. Because if we're not doing it well, we might just receive a limit. And we might just receive a full box, email box of information, and our mental storage capacity is just full. And on one side that might feel strange because our mind and our head is filled with memories and information. We know so much and we have so many memories. So on the one side it feels that we have an unlimited storage capacity, and on the other side it feels sometimes it's limited. We are unable to take in any more information. And that has everything to do with our temporal storage unit and our long-term storage unit. So on the one side, we can take in information, we can take in all the information, and then it can get full. Our temporal storage unit is what we use for all the information we take in about 24 hours in a day. And that's limited. That's located somewhere in our hippocampus in our brain, and it can get full. So after a whole day of working, the information is stored there, and it's full, it's overloaded. And after a while, we need to transfer that information from our temporal storage unit to our long-term storage unit. Something like our temporal and short-term memory to our long-term memory. And that process happens overnight. So night, sleeping, is perfect to store information or transfer the information from our temporal storage unit to our long-term storage unit. Because during the night, we don't take in any new information. At night, we are not using our mental processing power to take in any new information. No, we're using our full mental processing power to transfer all the information from our temporal storage unit to a long-term storage unit. However, we, these days, this society, we're taking in about 100,000 words of information per day. It's about 14 newspapers front to back, every day, every single day. And all that information has to be stored somewhere. And you can imagine with the digital age that it has been increasing and increasing. So we didn't used to take in all that kind of information on a particular day. Now if you just look at the leaves and the trees and what way you go to the water hole, or what way you need to take to approach your lion or any animal, that kind of stuff, so much less information that you need to be taken in, and you need to store. So you can see the information process as during the day we take in information in an email box or something, or a mailbox, and that email box or the mailbox can get full. It's like trying to stuff in a new letter or new piece of information in an overfilled and overstuffed mailbox. It's full, it cannot get in. So you need to wait till someone, you, take that information out and place it at a long-term storage unit. And it's not something like taking a sack of mail or email or information to another room and dumping it there. Because it would be very nice and very neat if we could find that information later on. If you just store it in a particular way, so we can retrieve it later when we need it. And our long-term storage unit is not just an rows and rows of shelves or filing cabinets. It's not something like that. Our long-term storage unit is a library without any lights. You can see it like a web of chains. So all the information we have on a particular issue, a particular topic, are combined in a chain or a stream of thoughts. So whenever you know something about a particular issue, a particular topic, the one ID will lead to another ID. One piece of information will lead to the other piece of information. So maybe, for example, you know that Ferraris are red. That's just a fact that you know. Or most of Ferraris are red. But you also know that strawberries are red, and you know that blood is red, and you know that blood is running to your veins, and that veins are taking all the blood and all the oxygen from your heart to your brain. Those kind of fault chains are very common and very useful, because they combine all kinds of sort of related information together in a chain of information. So whenever we have a chain of information, it's very useful, because that one piece of information can lead to the other piece of information. However, it's easier to add some information to an already existing chain of information than creating a whole new chain of information. Because if we create a whole chain of information and we don't know where it is in our brain, we can't find it, we can't retrieve it anymore, it will be lost forever. Because if you don't know where it is, if you don't know how to retrieve it, if you don't know how to activate it, it will be lost. So our brain uses something very interesting. It combines all these chains into a interconnected web of information. And everything will be combined together. And if you activate one piece, it will activate the other, and the other, and the other. So for example, you might forget the fact that most Ferraris are red. And you want to activate that piece of information. And I think that everyone has a particular time that you knew something, but you didn't know what it was. You knew that piece of information was somewhere in your brain, but you had no idea where it was. And then you can just try to grab on one of those chains of information and see what every piece of information will lead to, and hope that you will stumble upon it. So maybe you're eating strawberry and you see that red color, and then it reminds you, red. Ferraris were red. So all those pieces of information are interchained and connected, so that whenever you lose some information, you still have another way, a detour, to get all that information back. And this piece of information is very useful for helping us to store information in a better way. So we can wait till it's night and sleep, have a better quality of sleep, and try to process or facilitate the process of storing information or transferring information from a short-term storage unit to a long-term storage unit. Or we can do something else, something that will help that association kind of way of thinking, and that's called boredom. We can't just be bored. If we are bored more, we will think in associations. When we are bored, we allow our brain to make connections that have never been there before. It will create a new chain of information, and it will connect to different pieces of information that we know before. So it allows us to connect new information to the whole framework or network of information that you already have. And it allows it to transfer it better at night. We still need sleep. We cannot, change sleep for boredom, but boredom will help us to process the information already a little bit, transfer it into a way of an information chain, associations, that will help it later on to form and connect to all the information that we have already. So if your work relies on anything like creativity or decision making or problem solving, you need to be bored more, because that boredom allows you to combine and connect all the information that you have already got from the past and from the recent future or the recent present. Because then all the information will be combined into a whole chain of network, and we can let all the information sink in. We can analyze it, we can reflect it a little bit. We can make more sense of the past, more sense of any problems that we might have, and we can try to predict the future or the coming time. Alright, I would like to let it sink in for just a little bit, and then maybe if one of you already has any questions, I would like to take some questions before we move to the rest and the end of the part.
Was one question online?
Awesome.
Regarding the boredom aspect, what if you have ADHD traits? Is there an easy way to increase productivity, focus, and patience?
Yeah, good one. And so you could see that either boredom and deep work are two sides of the same coin. You both need deep work and boredom, and they combine that they can facilitate and they can increase each other. So on one side we need to be bored, on the other side we need to work deep. Maybe easier terms that we know, we can on one side focus, and on the other side we can process or reflect. So if you talk about ADHD or just an aspect of having a hard time of concentrating on a particular task, a hard time of taking and leaving all your information on all your focus and concentration on one particular task, and you might slip off more often than you want to, and you might find it hard to stay with a particular task because your ideas, spontaneous ideas, will just come up and you will mind wander or daydream. Then you need on one side to train that focus and that concentration, and on the other side you need more time to reflect and more time to be bored. You can try to oppress everything to be bored with, or you can try to oppress all the feelings and sensation of spontaneous thoughts, but better is to give it a few moments to allow those spontaneous thoughts to come up and the creativity to come up, and then use more time to work deep. Right now, most of us are working in something like a no man's land in between. We are trying to work deep, but then we are interrupted again, and then we are doing something else, and then we are going from another task to another task. Being bored a little bit, working deep a little bit, instead of separating the two. An hour of deep work, 15 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, of being bored or reflecting, or even more, 50 minutes of deep work, 50 minutes of boredom, 50 minutes of deep work, 50 minutes of boredom.
And if you talk about boredom, because I think that maybe confuse people, like you could say like I was bored because I was 50 minutes on my mobile. Is that the kind of boredom that you mean?
No. Yeah. So on one side, being bored, you are not interested enough in something that's happening. But being bored and being okay with letting your mind wander and daydream and let everything go off, that's something else. So it's boredom of doing nothing at all, and don't let your attention be drawn to anything in particular. But let your mind wander, let everything go on, let all the thoughts and creativity, spurge, without wanting to take any form of entertainment out of your pocket and do something else. Watch some emails or WhatsApp, all that kind of stuff.
And more practical would be you consider a walk boredom? Would there be a way to have some boredom in your life, or is that really too hectic?
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, and if you want to facilitate the process, you can sleep more, but you can also do a thought walk. Just walk across the block, do a walk through a park. The quieter, the better. The more nature, the better. No interruptions, no talking with colleagues, no podcasts, no nothing. Just being bored. Just do nothing except look at trees and bees, everything that's around you, without trying to have any form of entertainment. Because that process will facilitate to help all the information being, stored or sorted a little bit before you can officially store it or add it to your whole framework of all your knowledge that you already have. Awesome. Any more questions? Online, physical?
So you talked about the 4 data centers. Why is that 4?
There sometimes they talk about the magic number 4, although the Neuroscience literature. So it seems that we are able to process multiple forms of information at once. It's not that everyone will always have those exact same number, but it will probably be somewhere around 4. So neuroscience is not completely sure how many it will be, but around 4 should be, because all the tests and all the research that has been done suggests that it's at least more than 2, but less than 6.
How did they find out? So what were the experiments that they did?
It has something to do with your working memory. So your memory is still being able to process information and have that available for the near future. So the information is still there. So one of the data centers is still holding information while you're doing something completely different. And maybe something in your surrounding will trigger the thought or trigger something that was being processed in the data center. Could you go back to the 2 slides previous? Will process information that is in one of those data centers. So what they did is how much different related tasks can you do and still have that active information that you have not, had before that day. So it's new information still being processed somewhere, still being at a particular data center. Answer the question? only half.
Maybe after the.
Yeah, so I'm asking maybe.
Show me the study. He will send you the study.
Yeah.
I can definitely send some studies. Yeah.
Do you know if there was like a big difference between people, like how much data centers they have available? Like, was it the same for everybody, like 4 sort of, or was there a huge difference between some people that had like one or 2, and then some had like 6?
Einstein had 10.
Well, it was. It's hard to locate them in your brain. It's easy to locate some kind of neural networks that are interacting and helping you to analyze, helping to reflect, helping to think. So we know that what kind of different aspect of thinking, either it's analyzing, reflecting, storing information, taking in sensory information, we know that there are different neural networks doing those particular tasks, those cognitive processes. But we can't locate those data centers in your brain. However, if you use some cognitive psychology kind of tests and research, we understand that working memory is still processing information while we're doing something else. So somewhere our working memory can distinguish between different tasks which are not related to each other. However, that information will be stored as temporary, even less temporary than at 24 hours. If you just heard something, it's not directly stored in your temporal storage unit. It's being, on an active kind of process, on an active kind of data center, using the information. And if you completely change all your focus, all your mental process power to something else, that information will be lost forever.
So if you are like particular time bored, let's say we're taking a walk before you start, then you have all the 4 data centers available. Because we are all just coming from work, I'm still processing the type safety issues that is on for all deals. And actually have two available and miss half of your talk.
Yeah, exactly. So a few of you will have, data centers doing something else, posting that information, but using time to be bored, allowing you to be bored for a little while, allowing you to process that information on a different mental mindset. So without trying to be focusing or without trying to analyze any information, but just let your mind drift, let your attention drift. You allow yourself to let the information sink in, let it combine with something else, and store it in our temporal storage unit. It will still be stored in your temporal storage unit. It won't directly, be stored in your long-term storage unit. So you still need sleep to do that last bit, but we can facilitate the process a little bit with boredom. We can make it easier to sort it and to store it, so we can better store it later on. But we can clear off a little bit of the top, of the clutter of our mailbox. We can make a little bit more room so that the rest of the afternoon or the evening we can take in some more information. It's just a way of how we sort that information from, a complete mess till a little bit more organized, so we have some more space, so we take on some more information before we need sleep. In the end, you can do a whole day of working and maybe 2 days of working. After a while, it's full. You need sleep to clear, the temporal storage unit, or you won't take in any more information, or you will lose some information. Cool. Any more questions? Physical?
Would meditating have the same effect?
Yeah, just this morning I gave a training about meditation, and meditation is one of the ways, or some of the meditation forms will help you to do something similar to what you can do and achieve by being bored. So you can either take a full walk and go outside and think and let your mind wander, or you can use some forms of meditation that allow you to facilitate the process as well. Coming back to HDD, you can also use other forms of meditation to allow you to be working deeper and more concentrated without drifting off to other topics that are not relevant at a particular moment. Cool. So more questions from the online participants?
No, is it only thank you for answering the question?
Awesome. All right. So how often are you guys taking time to be bored, or take a thought walk, or meditate, or do something completely different? Zero. How hard do you think you need it?
I did for 3 minutes. So I'm just, during Corona, I did 4 walks.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not really doing more.
Yeah. The fun part is that we always know that we should have done it previously. We know it already a little bit too late. So my advice with those thought walks or ways of reflecting and letting the information sink in is preventive. Use it as a preventive measurement, so you are not wasting all your available storage capacity, temporal storage capacity, with all the information, but sort it beforehand. So make sure that you have time to reflect and let it all sink in, what you did in the morning, what you did in the afternoon, what you did in the evening, without going from one place to the other, going from one task to the other. And then the first part, to be bored, will be the time that your head hits your pillow and you're trying to sleep, and then everything will race by. Everything will come back, everything you have done that particular day will be there, because your body needs some time to sort the information. If you didn't do it during the day, you will do it when you try to sleep. And if you're finished, then you can drift off, to any magical world and try to store that information or transfer that information actually to the long-term storage unit. Alright, so this was a plea to be bored more. It was a plea to be less disturbed and interrupted. And see those two pictures not as just one or two separate pictures, but see them as one combination of taking in information, analyzing it, using all your mental processing power to combine everything that you have been learning or been doing and allow your thought walks or just watching out of the window or time that you just close your eyes during the day to let all the information sink in and be sorted and stored a little bit little bit better so you can use it later on and transfer it later and better at night. Awesome. Any last questions before I round up?
Yeah, you were talking about meditation. So do you have maybe examples of what you could use for triggering the boredom center and what you could use to trigger the focus center, or any types of meditation that you would recommend?
Yeah, boredom forms as mantra meditation, repetition. Some sort of repetition is always good to help you with your with facilitating that process of sorting and associating, and more as a subconscious kind of way. And everything that is more related to focusing and more similar to going to the gym, doing repetitions of the same thing over and over again, and trying to hold that focus a little bit longer, will help you with more deep work.
So there's one question. So being bored is like trying to let your brain pause for a while.
Yeah, pause. You can use them as breaks or pauses, but it's more like a mental reset, allowing your brain to have a mental reset before you go on to a new task. So if you do something completely different the first morning or the afternoon, or you do 2 hours of one particular project and then you will do 2 hours of another different project, definitely use that as a mental reset. Try to be bored for a while, allowing you to finish and empty those data centers for the one particular project, so you can later on do something else. Cool. Thanks. Yeah, can you go to the very last slide? Let's be bored together and work a low deep. All right, thank you all guys. Thanks for listening. Awesome, cool.